Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 5 of the Latest in Travel podcast by Guestcentric. I have with me Alex Barros, who is a consultant for the travel industry and works with a number of different startups across like travel, hospitality landscape. And he has over 20 years of experience in the industry. So Alex, it's great to have you. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Vanessa. An absolute honor.
Great. So I gave like a quick overview of what it is that you do, but for anyone that's watching and may not know, could you maybe expand a little bit on your experiences? Because I know you wear like quite a lot of different hats and you have been working with a lot of different companies throughout your career. So do you mind just giving us like an overview of what you've been up to?
Absolutely. So I'm actually Brazilian. So I was born and raised in Brazil from a British, Italian, German family, and came to Europe just over 20 years ago. And I'm actually an advertising and marketing professional. So I studied that in university back home, and started working with loyalty programs for cinemas and radio stations like many years ago now. And when I came to Europe, I started working again with a marketing agency that did brand affinity, specifically for MasterCard Europe, where I was literally working, building value propositions for MasterCard to win accounts. Because I need to take off the WhatsApp, otherwise it's going to be beeping throughout the whole thing. Sorry. Let's go back to after you can take it out, right? So cool. Let's continue. So I forgot where I was.
MasterCard?
So I was doing the travel offers and managing the MasterCard Premium Collection, collecting travel offers with the luxurious travel brands. And it turned out that one of my ex-bosses was invited to work for a company called Hospitality Marketing Concepts, which is an American company out of Newport Beach that focuses on loyalty programs. And because I obviously had a loyalty background and the travel background working with hotel brands and travel brands in general, literally he recommended me for the role, and I met these very eccentric founders, very nice people, the Ramadan family, and worked for them for about 5 years, doing, again, loyalty programs for hotels, point-based programs, and also paid programs, and also, points-based programs to compete against the Marriotts and the IHGs and so on. And after that, in one of the conferences I went to, ended up being approached by SiteMinder, and then joined SiteMinder and took a very specific role in taking SiteMinder to Southern Europe. The result of that was quite amazing. We went from having, 16 properties to having 3,500 in about 2 years in Spain and Southern Europe. That's actually where I actually got your colleague Felipa to come on board and work with us, which was amazing to have her over and work with her. And then from there, again, got approached by a company called Duetto, and I was the first employee of Duetto in Europe. I started the operations here, signed the biggest contract in the history of the company to the time, which was NH Hotels. And basically from there, we grew the business for about 2 years. We went from having, I think we had around 100 properties to start with, and by the time I left, we had just over 800, NH being 467 of them. And from there, I literally started working with a bunch of travel tech companies as advisor. So, Event Intelligence, Book Boost, also Easyway. Also did some work for Guestcentric and a bunch of others that I collaborated with. Have been working with accelerators and incubators as a mentor as well, and have seen many of the large brands that we know being born from the beginning. And one of them was actually BEONx, which now is BEONx. So 2 years after I left Dueto, I was working as CEO of a human development company in Brazil called uh, Human Factor Science. And I went there to build the platform to really license it and be able to scale. And ended up doing a project for BEONx with what they had to do to become, global leaders in revenue management solutions. So we did a big roadmap back then, and I was still doing my CEO job. They had a lot to do before they could actually do, let's say, that big shift from being a market intelligence platform to becoming an RMS. And they did an amazing job. And a few years down the line, after COVID, uh, you know, the role that I had as a CEO of this company in Brazil, I literally left at the beginning of COVID because I couldn't be going to Brazil anymore. I live in London, so therefore it was almost impossible. But and then during COVID, I actually ended up buying a couple of villas in Italy. They were completely torn down, and I managed to refurbish them. I love architecture, and I love the south of Italy as well. I'm also Italian, so it really feels like home. So literally, that was my COVID project, one of my COVID projects, and I also have during that time started a childhood business that I had, which is like
Okay, so we're back. Apologies to everyone for there was just a bit of a technical difficulty in the beginning. But yeah, so you were talking about your amazing villas and the project that you were doing during COVID. So we can just continue from there.
Yeah, I don't know if they're amazing. Obviously, they're my babies, so I think they're beautiful. But anyhow, yeah. I mean, funny fact is, I come from a hotelier family. So, part of my family is from the island of Saint Helena, in the middle of the Atlantic, where Napoleon Bonaparte was exiled. And my family used to own the only hotel on the island for many years.
Wow.
I got the opportunity to go and see the hotel in 2019, which was very nice to go with all my family and see it. So, it's really funny because I grew up in a house that was very much a hotel. I never understood that. Everybody would stop at our house and stay at our house. We always had, guests over, and it's really funny. It really feels like I've always been a hotelier, and it's just kind of second nature to me. But yeah, so I spent some time during COVID. I couldn't be locked up for so long. I'm always traveling, have been for the last, I don't know, 25 years. And during COVID, when I was meant to be locked in the house and just going out for an hour a day for walks, I was just literally going crazy. So since I had bought these houses in Italy, and it's in the very remote area in Italy, with a massive like green area around, and the beach just a few minutes away, I spent a lot of my time during the lockdown actually in Italy, building and designing the houses and making it into a property that I would want to go to. So that was kind of one of my projects. And I was, as I was saying, I also revived one of my old projects. So when I was a kid, I used to live in front of a massive cathedral. Maybe you can show it over there. I'll show it. I'll send you a link so you can show it. But that cathedral was it's such an iconic building, and I lived right in front of it. And the first time that I saw Paris, and I was like, oh my gosh, why why my cathedral doesn't have anything similar? Everybody's talking about the Eiffel Tower, but this is that's such an amazing building, but nobody really cares. So I always thought secondary destinations is actually a really good thing for like good tasteful souvenirs, and that's kind of, I love photography. So I photographed the area that I live in London, which is Old Isleworth, Richmond, and it's beautiful over there. It's very green, lots of river walks on the riverside. And I did that for a couple of years, and I finally found an artist that I liked to paint my pictures into watercolors. And I opened a shop. It's called Memory Makers Shop.com. And basically, that shop sells prints and originals of the surrounding areas where I live, which is a very beautiful corner of the world. So anyway, after that, I ended up COVID finished, went to EasyWay, worked as the MD for EasyWay for about a year. And it was very much, Easy Way, it's a Jewish, well, I shouldn't say Jewish, but Easy Way is an Israeli company. And because they were literally, they've always been very remote. They're very good at working remotely and selling things remotely, but that wasn't really me. I love meeting people face to face and taking part in events and networking and all of that. And then I went on a very interesting trip with one of my uncles, who is a guy who works with sustainable development of destinations, and he invited me to go to the Middle East with him to visit some of the most amazing projects that are happening in the region. In fact, I'm in Riyadh right now this week. But anyway, so I came to the Middle East and I saw some of the most amazing projects in terms of sustainability and the future. And I thought, you know what? I need to find someone somewhere that cares about stuff that I care about, so I can actually get involved. So I saw in the Middle East this many solutions that were, once upon a time just good to have because they were green and it was good marketing. But at this point in time, being green was actually meaning being profitable. So for me, this whole thing about sustainable profitability became kind of a thing. And at this time, Ruben and Emilio from BEONx or Beyond Price at the time were kind of ready to do the jump and do the whole rebrand that I had proposed a few years before. And then I came on board to deliver that for them. I was also already working with a company called Hotelverse with a very exciting plugin for booking engines that do choose your room technology. And I ended up splitting my days, between the two companies. And but very much my bigger hat is definitely BEONx currently. But yeah, I mean, I tend to say, my skills in startups and the part that I love about it is how do you get it off the ground? How do you rebrand it? How do you create a brand? And how do you put magnetism to a brand that people want to talk about and want to be involved? And all of them invariably have been companies that have made massive breakthroughs and changes in the industry. So if you think of SiteMinder, we changed the way how hotels used to put their inventory, all separated into one pool inventory. If you think about, HMC, we were doing paid programs where people didn't even know about it. You're basically taking locals to go to hotels and use the vacant time of restaurants and the empty rooms that are perishing with locals that would never come and stay in a hotel. So very different ways of thinking. Also, with Duetto, we brought in the idea of how do you actually use open pricing as a way to price rooms. So breaking the norm and changing the way people think is my passion. I love doing that, and I love providing things that basically make people think twice. And I think that, looking back, I kind of got lost a little bit on my mission and purpose, I suppose, in life. I worked with my uncle 25 years ago as his kind of steward or something like that. And we were working on a project 25 years ago, imagine, for the WTDC, proposing that they would educate guests to have a shower and close the tap while they're when they're shampooing their hair, and not changing the sheets and the towels every day. This is 25 years ago. And I remember it was very frustrating for him and for me because we were working on this beautiful project. At the time, the WTCC said, "Oh, this is too visionary, so far from our reality." And the funny thing is, 20 years on, we're still having the same conversations, and we still haven't got, a lot of brands to actually onboard that. Of course, I think COVID accelerated that, and people understood that the ability not to have to clean rooms every day unless guests require became very profitable. So suddenly, circumstances have helped hotels to take a massive leap in terms of retaining revenue and being more sustainable in many ways as well. So anyway, that's kind of like my journey. I worked with a bunch of other companies, which has been very exciting. Usually my role in companies is looking at the value prop, making sure we have a coherent story that people can relate to, that people can get on board. And then I usually go into the marketing part, where basically do I wrap it up, be it a PowerPoint presentation that tells a story that is, engaging, and it is compelling to get people to actually make the move and want to do business with you. So, and then from there, I usually go for strategic accounts. So how do I get, after I created this, this brand, or after I created the story, and manage to adapt the product to definitely have a market fit, then how do you actually make sure that actually happens? So then I go and work with strategic accounts to get them to actually deploy the solution, and that's usually my skill. So my shelf life usually is not very long in companies, because the time where you do all of that is very limited, from 1 to 3 years usually. And that's kind of the early stage that I love. I don't really like the corporate life. I'm not a guy who could ever work for for Oracle or a company like that, because I move too fast. I don't like to be an ant in an organization. I like to be one of the heads, help people think, help people take my input on board, of course, as long as it provides value. And that's a little bit about me, I guess. A lot, but
That's a lot, yeah. It's a lot to unpack there.
yeah.
But yeah, and actually, it's quite interesting, because I think you're my first guest that because something I usually like to sort of understand about people is like whether hospitality was like their chosen route in terms of like career choice. But in your case, it's like really built into your DNA. But then, it's like you've been wearing so many different hats over the years, with like hospitality kind of almost at the core of everything that you do, which is it's quite fascinating, actually. Cool. And so you mentioned actually before our call that you have an Airbnb. So these projects that you had in the south of Italy, is that tied into that, or is this something?
Yes, those are basically properties that. So I have been spending maybe 17 years going to Puglia every single year for holidays. Every single year we go to the same place, same beach. It's a little place in Taranto, which has got amazing, like Caribbean beaches of Italy. And we've been going there for many years. And during COVID, we finally thought, you know what, time to buy something. We don't want to be coming in and staying with our lovely friends forever. And it was a perfect excuse to say, look, we can't stay with you because we'll kill you. If we came with COVID potentially from London, so therefore we need to buy a place and stay somewhere else. And it was great because we had finally the opportunity to actually buy something and do it. And so I did a lot of research. I'm actually, going back to your comment before. I'm actually, I'd say, a frustrated architect. So I really wanted to do architecture. That was kind of my desired profession. But I had I came to study in Italy, and then and that was kind of on the way to doing industrial design and architecture in the Politecnica di Milano. But then I went back to Brazil to visit my mom, and she passed away on an accident, very, very unsuspectingly, and then therefore I had to stay, and I had to then change my head what I wanted to do, and then I went into advertising. Now, I think that my background, the reason why I have so many hats, and the reason why I think that I ended up doing what I do, has a lot to do with two things. My mom was a serial entrepreneur, so she had many businesses. She ran many businesses all the way from newspapers, radio stations, tabloids, and real estate agencies. And she had an event organizing company. So we organized events in all sorts of industries, all the way from hospitality to fashion to medical events. And my mom and dad were divorced, so I started working very young. I was the eldest in the family, so you know how it works. You have the eldest son. So I remember by the time I was 10, I was managing people in events, and I had a whole team that I had to manage on the weekends or in the afternoons or in the evenings, because my mom was too busy. She had 4 children, and I was the oldest, so I was kind of like always being her let's say left arm, maybe not the right, but the left arm, helping her out with what I could. And that gave me a lot of preparation, to be honest, in life, because I've been working with lots of different business models and innovation from when I was born. I mean, I saw my mom coming up with fashion brands and events and all things that you need to sell. And she used to say, look, if you can paint the picture of a dream in somebody's mind without showing them a picture, then you can sell anything. And that's what you need to do in life to be successful, no matter what you do. And I always had this with me, and I almost like refused to be a salesman because I think there was this whole thing about, salespeople, and I had this kind of prejudice against them at some point. But when I finally, let's say, wore the hat and decided that it was the right thing to do, and I was talented doing it, it's fantastic. I wish I had owned that more from younger age, because I always kind of did it, but I didn't really want to take the credit for it. I didn't want to be related to sales. But selling, it's very rewarding, because you give. Usually, you're only able to sell if you create value for somebody else. So you're literally creating value for two sides of the equation. The company providing a service that basically makes somebody else's life better. And when we talked about value creation before the call, that's what I meant by it. So for me, the value creation is kind of the core of any sales process or any sales campaigns that you might do. And in the reality is, everybody every day has to sell themselves, or has to sell their services, or have to sell an idea. And I think there is this stigma on salespeople, which are effectively people that are very good at selling what they want to sell and the ideas they want to sell. But in reality, everybody who's successful that I know of, first and foremost, they're very good salespeople. They can either sell themselves very well, they can sell ideas very well, and they can create value. Create this chain that provides value creation for the parties involved. So I always believe in this win-win sort of partnership and relationship, where you win, I win, everybody wins, and what we have together is bigger than what we had separated. So that's kind of always been sort of my philosophy. And I think that I always try to work with people that I love, that I enjoy spending time with, because in the end of the day, we spend more time with the people that we work with than with the people that we, that are in our lives, our children, our partners, or whatever. So when you do work somewhere, I think that making sure that the people that you work with are aligned with you and with your values, with what you think, I think is super important. So yeah, that's kind of, I think that hospitality was really built within my my time growing up, and with my mom, her businesses, and even the way that we were raised, having people at the house at the time, because we always had these events. People would come over, we had to host them, we had to show them around, we had to put them in a hotel, make sure they were fine and all that. So it's kind of like second nature to me. Like I never really struggled with it. And of course, because I've been in the travel tech space for so long, I know all the pieces of it, and I know what people want to buy, and what I want to buy. And for me, it was kind of, okay, what would be the perfect house for me to come to Puglia? And that's what I built there for me. And it's very rewarding, when you're actually able to build something that creates memorable, unforgettable experiences for others. It's very exciting. I think it's hard work. Don't get me wrong. I had never done it before, like professionally, and I've had it for 3 years now, and it's really hard work. And I really respect hoteliers more than ever, because I know how much it takes for you to get there and have the sheets properly ironed, and the bed well made, and the walls properly taken care of. I mean, it's really a lot of work.
But I imagine it's quite rewarding as well, and you probably meet a lot of interesting people passing through, and different experiences and things like that. I can, because my parents have an Airbnb. Well, they used to have one as well, and I never was like super heavily involved in the business. But from their perspective, because they were managing it, they were like, yeah, it's just the big highlight is just the people that you meet. So that's cool. Yeah, and it's good that you. I can imagine very valuable and rewarding that you had that experience from very early on, building that foundation into your career. Cool. So I guess sort of moving on and reflecting a bit on your experiences in like the startup environment and working with a lot of different companies, what have been some of your specific highlights and I guess accomplishments that you're most proud of throughout your journey in this field?
So I think that with a lot of the companies that I work with, um, I think that the legacy that one can actually build and can actually help is more than the success of the business and the money that you generate for the business itself. I think it's the people that you actually bring into the process and how you help them grow and develop and become a better version of themselves and become successful. So every time that I look at a job that I have been before, more so than, oh, how many hotels did I bring on at Dueto or Sideminder or BEONx or whatever, I think, of course, I think BEONx for me for sure is one of the biggest. I did it 3 times now, but HMC rebranding was amazing. I think it was taking a 25-year-old company, rebranding it, building something fresh, and that was super exciting. And then I did it again with another company called the Factor Humanas Ciencia, which was this human development company in Brazil, which was CEO. I had to literally get a few books published that have been on the wardrobe of the founder for 30 years and haven't been touched since then. I had to build 14 brands for her, plus the name of the methodology, and register them globally and create a whole team of it, operations, tech platform. So that was super rewarding because that business really transforms professionals in a business environment. So, the company was very much focused on providing human development for CEOs and C executive suites of large organizations around the world. Obviously, very much focused with the Brazilian ones because that's where the company was based. That one's also I'm very, very proud of because of the impact that it actually has. With people in general, professionals. And of course, I think that um, the work with SideMinder was great. The work with Dueto, bringing the first employee and seeing Dueto going from having such a small footprint in Europe, like having like no accounts, to becoming a global player now. It's amazing. Same thing with SiteMinder. If you go to SiteMinder, when I arrived there, we were Siteminder. A couple of years later, we were like SiteMinder. People knew who we were. We were the cool kids on the block. So I mean, and the friends that I made there, the people that I worked with that have taken leadership roles in organizations all around the world is super exciting and very rewarding. And that's definitely potentially for me the thing that I'm most proud of. I think that the relationships that you build, the people that you help develop are the things that really count in the end. Nobody cares about what you did to your business, but the people care. The impact you had in their lives, and how you help them, how you give them an opportunity, how you coach them, how you mentor them, and how you've somehow potentially help them build a better lives for themselves, or a better story, or a better product, or something like that. So I think for me, those are kind of the big accomplishments. I think that with Beyond Price, the whole rebrand going from Beyond Price to BEONx has definitely been again very exciting. I mean, the founders have really delivered their baby and said, Alex, rip it apart and do whatever you want with it. And they literally trusted me on it, and we worked together, and we did. And I think that we elevated the brand to completely new standards. It's an amazing case study, which I'm very proud of as well. So yeah.
Great. And I imagine I mean, it's cool, in the sense of working in these sort of startup environments, having that autonomy, as you mentioned, to kind of just like be given that free reign to control the projects. I can imagine that's also quite, rewarding as well. But then with that, it's like also this need to be like agile and very fast paced and reacting to different demands and so on. I guess like, what would be like, how do you manage that? Like, how do you juggle that, having your focus in all these different places? Because like for someone like me, it's really like a challenge. So how do you, what's your secret? Like,
I mean, being very straightforward, it's not easy and it's exhausting.
yeah,
But I think that, for example, now with Hotelverse, I mean, Hotelverse is a very exciting product that's changing how hotels are booked, and giving guests the ability to book specific room, which is completely new. So for me, it was very exciting. So in less than 2 years, I've managed to get them to work with NH Hotels, Radisson, Pestana, which is a brand of yours in Portugal, and some very exciting projects which I can't discuss yet, but here in the Middle East. So basically, some of those things for me, they're not easy, but I guess the BEONx and Hotelverse role that I had for the last couple of years, it's been a road that I've managed to marry interests of the two companies, and my travel was paid by, for example, both companies, and I was able to actually, cost less to do more and access sometimes the same customer. So there was a synergy that I built between the two companies that I could use myself, not have a conflicting interest because they weren't competitors at all. They were more kind of a complementary sort of product, one to the other. And sometimes I can open a door for a brand, but not for the other. And basically, such as life. And that would have happened anyway. But I might as well, like if I knock on one door, I might try twice, gonna go this way or that way or both. And some of the brands we're working with, we have successfully got the brand to work with both brands, which is very exciting, and it works very well for us. So for me, I think that time management is definitely something, the one that will do that needs to be very focused on. I'm very entrepreneurial. I don't know how to be, how not to have autonomy. I am a terrible corporate employee. I could never be somebody who does what they're meant to do, or what they're asked to do. I am not very good at that. I'm definitely an entrepreneur. I have always been, and will die one for sure. And I guess I was lucky enough to be very well compensated for startups. So I've been doing this for other people, but I always take shares, and so I end up having the kickback, obviously proportional to the effort that I put in. But I have several ideas in my head, and hopefully, sometime, maybe soon, I'll take some time for myself, and I'll do one of my projects. I mean, and that should be very exciting. And I think that I've learned a lot. I've worked with startups for many, many years. I've seen the mistakes. I've seen the things that work. I've seen things that don't work. And I think that potentially it's got to be something very much related with giving startups the knowledge that I've acquired in the last 25, well, 30 years, really. If I think about my mom's startups when I started when I was 10, I've seen so many of them. So yeah, so basically that's kind of where I'm going. So it is hard. It's not for everyone. But again, in the same way that maybe you say you can't do all those things together, I would be bored to death doing one thing only because I just can't. So I need to be able to think about a couple of things. For example, my Airbnb, I don't really get involved much apart from when I was really 100% there during COVID. Now, somebody else runs it for me, and it's great. But yeah, that's kind of. I mean, I've opened a few other businesses as well, and it's something that I enjoy. I always do something on the side. I think that financial independence and creation of wealth is something that I care about quite a bit. I think that being able to actually accumulate some wealth, so you have the freedom to do what you want to do when you want to do, is something that I'm going to be die working on it. In the same sense that I've always been very much what we call, like, in Portuguese, a bon vivant. Always had a good life, and my mom had a good life. She wasn't very much of an accumulator of wealth. She was very much one that underaccumulated and gave us a very, how can I say, lavish life when we probably couldn't even afford having that life. But anyway, it was a great life, and thank God, because she had such a short life that for us, if it was the other way around, we wouldn't have had the same education, the same opportunities, and that was definitely what gave us the best foot forward, having had the life that we had. So yeah, so I guess everyone, I mean, as long as you know in your bones what you're good at and what you want from your life, I think knowing where you want to get to, you get there. I knew what I'll be doing today when I was 7. I knew that I'd be working for companies, that I'd be traveling all around the world and getting to know new places, and I'd be working with hotels. I was 9, and I knew that. And you put it in your mind, and the mind is something very, very powerful. I think when you put your mind to something, it just happens. It always happens. It's not any coincidence. It's not luck. I think it's definitely something that if you can harness the wind to take you where you want to go, as long as you know where you want to go, you can do it. Otherwise, there's no good winds, right? If you don't know where you're going to go, you're going to end up just going and drifting somewhere else.
I totally agree with that. And I mean, I know life, there's always deviations and there's, you can, but I totally agree that it's like helpful to have like at least some kind of an overarching goal. And then like, even if the roadmap kind of changes along the way, like at
Yes.
least you have like a destination and something that you're aiming for. Cool.
Okay.
And so you mentioned actually before the call that you're really passionate about travel, and I imagine like for your line of work, you you must go to like all sorts of different places and experience a lot of different cultures. And on a sort of like a professional level, working with different companies in different like destinations or countries and things like that. How do you sort of appreciate the cultural differences working with different individuals, and like in terms of communication, like how I don't know, how do you make those connections and those collaborations with all these different cultures and in the different companies that you work with?
I think that there's a couple of things for me. Um, I think that when you speak several languages or a few languages or more than one language, you learn one thing, that there's perspective and there is a departure point from every culture. So the way that you speak Portuguese or English or Spanish or French or Italian or German or Japanese, uh, there is a departure point of how people think and how they structure their thoughts and how they structure the world and how they see the world, because the experience of that culture gives you the ability to look at something. So without that lens, you're not anybody, right? So all of us have got our own lenses. I come from a very varied background. So, my family is, British, Italian, German, also Portuguese. And I was raised in this melting pot with very different people. Like they're very different. I think the south of Brazil is very much a very recent colonization. So the town that I was raised in is only like, I don't know, maybe 70 years now. It was 1946, I think it was founded. So it's very, very recent, let's say, colonization. So I think that over there, it already gave me a very broad understanding of different people. We had lots of Lebanese, lots of Japanese, lots of Italians, lots of Ukrainians, lots of Russians, lots of British. And that gives you already like a pretty good, I mean, it wasn't like one of those places where you only have people from one country and you don't know anybody from anywhere else. We were all very different to start with. And then, so my family for generations, they've always been mixing as well. Like, my grandmother is British, my grandfather is Italian and Portuguese, and the other side is German and Italian and Portuguese. And so all these mixes, I think, kind of make part of my DNA, which has helped me a lot. But when I was very young, my mom used to travel a lot and take us everywhere. And Brazil is very diverse as well. Every single state is kind of a different country. And us understanding those different nuances of how to do business here and there is something that we learned from very young. And I think that the listening part, actively listening, is what enables you to actually understand where the other is coming from, and then you can plug in and potentially help them create value in something they're looking for. So for me, this whole, let's say, understanding the culture has to do with listening and empathy. So if you are actually able to apply, your listening, but like active listening, really, like, which is very hard to do. We tend to speak more than we listen, and it's really hard an exercise to actually do it. But that's how I tend to collaborate. And I moved out of Brazil when I was very young. I was 14 years old. I went to the US, and again, went to live in Idaho, which was somewhere where you talk to Americans, like, oh, Idaho potatoes. I mean, Idaho is amazing. I love it. Amazing, like, outdoors lives. And that was fantastic for me. And for me, understanding and having to fit in very young and understanding like the culture, the differences, and then being able to look back at my upbringing in my town. I think that was kind of like the first time where I could really understand the real differences of cultures. When you're traveling on holidays, you are not really understanding what's going on. You're still with your culture. You're kind of blind to the nuances of what's going on around you. But for me, I find fascinating whenever I go. And I'm here in Saudi now, and in Dubai last week, this a couple of days ago, and even like within the same region, you have a very different way to do business, to talk to people, to interact, to network, and so on. And I love this. Always fascinated me. So for me, it's something that I love. I mean, I I remember when I was a kid, my uncle used to travel a lot, and he had his passport like full of stamps. Like, oh my gosh, one day I'm gonna have a passport full of stamps, and maybe. And he talked about the 100 Club in London. When you've been to 100 countries, and he's like, oh, one day I'm gonna get to it. I'm like, you know what? I'm definitely gonna be able to do that one day. So it's funny. We've been working in it ever since, and I think that the more places you get to see in the world, the smaller you realize you are, and the more responsibility you have because you've seen more. So you have to do more, and you have to try and have a bit more of an impact on things that people that don't have the opportunity to see all those things. So I'm very fortunate to have. I think that I've probably worked now. I think last time I counted, in over 80 countries. Just worked, not
Oh,
even holiday.
wow. Yeah, that's a
So
lot.
that's a lot. I mean, I've sold projects to customers in over 80 countries, either partnerships or technology, and every single one of them was very different and very rewarding. And I built some really nice relationships and friendships that really, I guess, made who I am. You know, so yeah, so I love these nuances of culture and how we actually interact with each other. Yeah.
And what would you say, and I know like if you've traveled and worked in over 80 countries, it's probably going to be very hard to narrow down to just one. So I'll narrow it down to this year. What would you say, like in terms of traveling and experiencing a new culture, has been like your biggest highlight just in this year, in 2023?
Gosh, I'd love to tell you what it is, but I can't. I'll tell you afterwards.
Okay.
But uh, but anyway, I think I've been to many countries. Let me put it this way: I went to a country that this year, which I've always wanted to go because of the music, because of the culture, and it was absolutely beautiful. And it was very sad the way the population lives because of the government, because of their type of how can I say, um, political settings. Um, it made me reflect a lot on how fortunate I am to live in the UK and to have multiple nationalities that gives me access to live, in over, I don't know how many, maybe 30 countries without having to ask for a visa, which is very few people in the world, unfortunately, have this opportunity. I'm an immigrant, despite being, grandchild of immigrants in Brazil. I'm again an immigrant in Europe, and I wanted to build my own life and do my own things differently. And since I was a kid, I thought that the world had no walls. I didn't realize the world had walls, and that people could only get in if they were lucky enough to have enough money or to have, a certain look or a certain, whatever. And suddenly, when you go to a place like that, and I learned it very young because even though in theory I should have used an European passport to go to the US. It wasn't important to actually ask for a European passport. So I remember when I was 13, I got a visa refused to go to the US when I applied with a Brazilian passport. I was 13. They said, "Oh, you can't go to Brazil because you have no ties to Brazil." I mean, how can a 13-year-old child have any ties to a country? I mean, you have your mother, your father, your family, and the government tells you, "Oh, you can't go because you haven't got any ties to the country." I mean, are you serious? Anyway, I was lucky enough that my family, was influential. They managed to get a meeting with the consulate, and then they gave me the visa on the same day. But I mean, that doesn't happen for everyone. I could have been a child that was refused an opportunity that would have changed my life. It has changed my life. Having lived in the US has changed the decision that I made. When I went to the US, I decided I don't want to live in Brazil anymore, never again. And I knew that. So if I hadn't had the opportunity to do that, my life would be very different from what it is now, for sure. I'm sure it would be very similar in many ways because I knew what I wanted and it was going to happen one way or the other. But the reality is that wasn't the way. The way was via the US and living there. But I think that this whole thing of the world having walls and people not having mobility and being stuck with governments that are abusive and are, I'm going to say, authoritarian, it's very sad. And thinking about that, this happens today in 2023,
Yeah.
and people are living on $25 a month if you're a doctor.
Yeah.
It's the saddest thing ever. So I think it's a highlight to see how the people from that country can still smile and can still
Yeah.
be nice and hospitable. So it was a country that I always wanted to go to. But it's almost shocking that organizations that are involved with that country, that are perhaps in Europe or in the US, they are part of it. They're part of the problem. They're basically they're contributing for it to continue the way it is, and that's very sad for me as a human being and as a professional. And yeah, but I mean, for me that was like the highlight of my year, I suppose. It has lots of implications. That's why I can't tell you what it is, but if I actually did this, you have a lot of implications that I couldn't cope with right now. But it's a beautiful, amazing country, and I loved it. And I really hope that change comes and they can get rid of this horrible regime that they have right now, and that the people there can potentially have a better life. Where we can dream and you can build your dreams and build a better life. So yeah.
That's actually kind of an interesting note to sort of lead into the next, because looking at some of the trends and like sustainability being one of the big ones. Do you, with these sort of destinations, I guess, that are a little bit more, that have like government issues or like sort of conflict situations and things like that, how do you think, because I know with some like Angola was like a country that I went to when I was quite young, and it was almost like the infrastructure, everything was still sort of recovering from the Civil War and all of this sort of thing. And I remember thinking at the time, like, oh, if there was more, it's such a beautiful destination, and there could be like so much tourism, and it could really help the economy in that sense. But I guess it's like two-folded, because then it's like the over tourism problem. So I don't know. What are your? I'm not sure exactly how to articulate the question.
Yes.
But like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, how would there? I don't know. How could destinations maybe find that sort of balance to kind of bring more tourism to the destinations, but then at the same time, really look after the native population and the local population.
Yeah. So I think that I mean, a country that I can tell you that I'm very impressed by what they're doing is Saudi. I'm actually in Saudi now. I think MBS, the Crown Prince, has such an amazing view of the world and what he wants to do with the region. And it's very inspiring to talk to young Saudis and asking them, what do you think of Saudi now? And they're like, oh my gosh, MBS has changed everything. Before I couldn't do this, I couldn't do that. Now I can do this, I can do that. And guess what? I'm coming from somewhere else back to Saudi because now I have opportunities here. So I think there are things that people can do that can literally change the trajectory of a whole country. And I think that Saudi is an amazing example of that. I think Saudis realized early on that the petrol is going to be the oil is going to run out. They needed to come up with the new oil, which is tourism here. They are doing some amazing sustainable development destinations that are definitely super exciting. The Red Sea Project, NEOM, Alula, Amala, and the number of projects continue growing. Some of the projects that they're doing are mind blowing, like the what is it, Greening Arabia, for example, where they're transforming the desert into a forest again, as it was the beginning of when the earth was created. So basically, it's very inspiring. I think that I'm definitely a believer in sustainable profitability. I don't think sustainability for the sake of it makes sense. It has to make sense commercially, because otherwise there's not a place for it in the real world. And I think the destinations can only be managed by a community if the community gets actively involved. The community of a specific city gets actively involved and agree on what you want for that community, what's the future of that community, and make those decisions. You're actually able to transform a destination by pricing, for example. Maybe a destination is very cheap and brings the wrong kind of crowd for that destination. People hate it. If the local population sits together with the hoteliers in that area and say, look, the kind of customers you guys are bringing are awful. We don't want them in here anymore. Let's try and change this. So you could potentially, put the, say, I don't know, different opening hours of the pubs and bars, better pricing, up market products and whatever. So you can literally change what you're looking for. Of course, some of the destinations will never be, never is a word that's very strong. They'll be hardly able to change and transform to something else. I think that one of the things that I have seen that works very well is when you are building, some places around the world, they have nothing to do to create a destination. But if you think, for example, of Dubai, okay, or I'm talking about the Emirates. If you go to Emirates, it's amazing that those guys, I don't know, have you been to the Emirates before yourself?
Yes, I have.
So you've been and you've seen those deserts where you just have sand, and they put quads and they put camels and they put this camps in the middle of nowhere, and people go there to see people dancing and eating and jumping on a camel. And there's nothing there, but they've managed to create wealth and create value that people want to see. And that's definitely what you call sustainable development. You're in the middle of the desert, you're not bothering anyone, there's no animals, there's nothing there. There was just like nothing, a bunch of nothingness there, and you could still build that and make it really amazing. Another case study of it, I think, is Vegas. If you think about Vegas just from let's say a popular outlook, you think, oh gosh, a little hell of party, right? But when you think about that, Vegas was like the middle of the desert. There was nothing there, and these guys decided that was going to become a massive destination. I can only imagine the people that were around and thinking, "Oh my gosh, this is never going to happen. What are you talking about?" And these guys literally made laws that, for example, in Vegas, I don't know if you know this, but in Vegas, I don't even know if it's still like this, but I know that for many years, Vegas did not charge electricity for the any of the businesses. That's why they had so many lights around it. And that's why they had all the fountains and all those things that make the city so colorful and bright and amazing. So there's some really smart things that you can actually do that can help the local community to actually create wealth and distribute wealth in a nice way. But the local community has to be really involved with the place where they live to actually make that happen. And it's not something that most places do. If you go to the Nordics, it's very common practice. People do it for the love of it. They're not like in Brazil or maybe in Portugal, where politicians are driven by the money and the power they get, because they're pretty much kind of let's say, of course there are many politicians, and I personally know many that literally do it for the love of it, and they really want to make it happen. And not all politicians are corrupt, but the driving force behind it is very different from when you go to the Nordics, where you have a voluntary working in the city hall, trying to make things better, and being the mayor of a city, getting no salary whatsoever. So I think that the community involvement is something that is the only thing that can actually change destinations and make them more sustainable and more livable and so on. But sustainability is more than just being profitable as well. I think that, like I mentioned to you, there are brands that you and I use in Europe that are represented in that country that I told you about, that are part of the problem. And and we don't know about it. How sustainable is that? How ethical is that? How ethical is it you have, a hotel employee that is paid under any sort of minimum, humanly acceptable amount? And you're part of the problem. So I'm part of the problem as well, because I financed some of those brands myself. So effectively, I think that is a responsibility that all of us have to have, and it's really hard to actually do that, because that involves, for example, not buying products that are built in countries where child labor is used, or low salaries are paid to employers, and everybody's squashed with all the interest rates and the cost of living. So you don't really have a lot of choice. You kind of still have to buy the products you don't want to buy because it's the only one you can afford. So it's kind of a catch-22, isn't it? What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And I think that shift, it's the wheels of change are kind of moving maybe a little bit too slowly. So it's kind of, even the whole thing, like moving to electric vehicles, but then even electric vehicles, there's like the lithium mining situation with that. So it's kind of, how do you achieve that balance? And I guess that's the $1 million question.
Yeah.
And leading to my next question, actually, just sort of drawing on your experience, extensive experience in marketing, but then also your background in hospitality and as, working in hotels and things like that. How would you, what would be your advice, I guess, for hotels to sort of implement these sustainable, like a sustainable strategy or sustainable measures, but then also to communicate that to their guests? Because we're seeing, a number of different studies, guests or travelers, they want to travel more sustainably. There's kind of more of this like shift to more like, I guess, conscious travel. So, and then even, with the big companies as well, like not, working with suppliers that don't meet their sustainability criteria. What would be your recommendations for like hotels to implement this, not only have a sustainability strategy, but to also effectively communicate it and convince guests and travelers or stakeholders that they're a sustainable business?
So in fact, like I mentioned, at BEONx, I decided to work with them because they were very much believers that there was change that had to happen. So we work with a company called BioScore, for example, that certifies hotels and tells whether they are sustainable or not, and that score can be provided to your guest on the booking engine, so you can actually see how that hotel compares to other hotels. And there's some channels like Booking and Expedia and Escapio and a bunch of others that are actually already displaying some of those things. And I think that's going to become definitely one of the biggest decision points. So right now, if you think about price, location, and price, location, and reviews, those are the three things that make you book a hotel right now. The fourth one is going to be how sustainable you are versus your competition. And I think that's going to be the one that my daughters are going to be looking at and deciding what they're going to be staying in hotel A, B, or C. That's going to be not something that you have to do just to be more green, or you're not going to win the business because of that, but you will lose the business because of that for sure at the first stage. And people think, will I stay with the hotel that's doing all the right things, or am I going to stay with the one that's not doing it? When I go to a hotel that has little plastic bottles, I think, oh my gosh, are you seriously doing that? I mean, do you not have dispensers? So it's really frustrating to see it, and me as a customer, I write about it every time I see it. I'm like, look, I take a picture, I post it on TripAdvisor, and I literally, I have a code name on TripAdvisor because I work with a hotel, so I can't really use my name as is. But I literally take a picture and I literally say all of it, because I think we don't want to be part of the problem. We ask people not to change your sheets. You go back to the room, the sheets and the towels have been changed. Like, why do you do that? Why are you wasting all that water? Why are you wasting all that energy? And why are you not respecting my choice of not to be so wasteful and be conscious about my travel? So I think that guest communication is a big part of it. I think that platforms like EasyWay, HiGPhy, BookBoost, and all the other ones are very important, because people don't read emails anymore. They only look at WhatsApp and text messages. So if you do that, you're actually able to communicate with them and tell them what you're doing as well. For example, at Hotelverse, we also can show, for example, what you're doing in the hotel. So you can see a recycling plant of water in the garage that basically recycles gray water. You could see, the water bottle fountains where you can actually just fill up your water bottle rather than getting, plastic bottles in your room, and a few other things as well. So I think that there's lots of ways of doing it, and I think that's becoming more and more important, and it's definitely going to become the decision-making factor that's going to steer people, especially from this next generation, into choosing your brand versus somebody else.
Yeah, I agree. That makes sense. And obviously, like I think tech and like technology companies, they're kind of almost at the forefront in sort of like trying to create these solutions and strategy. Well, not yeah, like technology solutions that can, I guess, sort of promote sustainability. Um, and sort of like, what would be your advice in terms of like hotels and technology companies working together? Like, what ways can they work together more closely to sort of promote sustainability more?
Like I said, I think the bottom line is if you want any technology to actually, let's say, even have a flag on sustainability, it has to make commercial sense. It has to be profitable. If you're going to be selling sustainability just for the sake of it, I mean, the times where you used to do green things because it was cool and it was marketing are gone. Now, if you do it, it doesn't mean anything profitably, you're greenwashing. And when you're greenwashing, you're doing a bad thing. So therefore, I think that you really have to understand what kind of impact you can actually have in the specific, scenario, and how you can potentially really help hotels to be enabled to deploy technology that will actually impact, I don't know, energy consumption, water consumption, uh, uh, labor consumption, plastic consumption, and so on. And if you do that, then obviously, I think you have a place and you'll be relevant. And I think more and more VCs are looking for startups that are very much with a sustainable focus. And I think that the key on it is profitability. If you have something sustainable and profitable, it will work. If it's just sustainable, just because it's beautiful, unfortunately, it's not going to fly. Those times are long past, long gone, and they're not going to be coming back ever again, I don't think. So I think that the focus is how can you, as a tech provider, provide a solution that will have an impact to the hotels, that will give them a positive ROI, and potentially a low investment upfront, because hotels are also struggling with the rising costs of technology and the many technology providers that are out there. So I think that that's kind of my take on it.
Cool. And sort of just moving along a little bit to keeping in with the technology theme, but another trend that's sort of obviously a big, widely talked about trend at the moment since the advent of ChatGPT and things like that, is sort of like the AI piece. And actually, we ran like a quick poll, sort of like gauging whether hotels would want to like implement this or would plan to sort of implement this as part of their distribution and like commercial strategy. And we actually found that over 60% of the respondents were planning to do so. But like in sort of your experience of working with the different companies, and like, do you see that reflected in reality? And if so, in what ways? And do you anticipate, how do you anticipate this developing like in the months and years to come?
Yes. So I think that, first of all, I think that guest messaging, for example, it's a great example of what ChatGPT has managed to do. I mean, guest messaging, you had to create prompts before that basically, like, okay, you have to guess what the guests are going to be asking, and then you have to write the answer. So when the guest asks, you have the answer ready, right? That was kind of how it used to be before ChatGPT. Then, of course, you had natural programming language, which helped you move along things, but very slowly. With ChatGPT, you could create this database with some answers, but you could actually teach everything about a hotel, a neighborhood, and you can actually get that platform to talk to your guests in over 100 languages live, saving labor, being sustainable, and that from that sense being more profitable as well, and taking the tasks that are very mundane of answering, where's the pharmacy next door? I mean, don't need to have a human answering that. So hotels are doing it already, which is incredible. So in easy way, they integrated ChatGPT into the platform, and it's going fantastically well for them. And I'm sure some of the providers are doing the same. Now, for example, at BEONx, we did very early on when ChatGPT was just coming out. Doris Stein, who is the ex-CEO of Fornova, and also Ira Vuk, who is a consultant in the US. They had a course for startups, I guess in travel, on how to use ChatGPT on the different departments. And we at BEONx literally jumped on it straight away. And every single department of the organization had to put a case study on what they had to do on daily basis. And they showed us how to use ChatGPT to actually use it, like the prompting and things. And it was amazing. And it's got to the point where, you know, I mean, the background, I'm going to show you here, the background that you see right behind you, and actually I'm going to show you one a bit more complex, this one. This is basically fully created by ChatGPT, including with Mid-Journey and also I think Bard. So basically, we were doing a job announcement to try and find somebody who could work for us, our marketing team in BEONx. And I was talking to my director of marketing. I said to her in the morning, I said, hey, you need to do a screen that shows somebody working with all of the different screens, kind of depicting what kind of things you'll be doing. It has to be beautiful. It has to have the tone of the brand. It has to have a Christmas tree because it's almost Christmas. And literally that was done within a couple of hours. I mean, I come from advertising. This would have cost thousands for you to do. It would take you a week for you to do it. And it would never be possible to get to that agility. So, for example, the roles that we're hiring at BEONx, major requirement. If you're not a heavy user of AI, I don't want to talk to you. And that's pretty much it. If you don't use AI right now and you can't tell me how you use AI right now, I don't want you in my team because you're not able to compete with the people that are using it. So therefore, I think AI has literally gone from being something people talk about to being like an essential tool of professionals. I mean, even for you, like, you know, creating content and writing interviews and whatever. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Like you can do everything with it. You just basically put, okay, talk about this guy, talk about this person, and you just basically do it. So I think that, I mean, the changes are going to be exponentially faster than they have been already, and I can only imagine what that means, you know, because right now, I mean, if I have to hire a role, I can get the job description, the advert for it to be a spot or a video, all created with artificial intelligence, and that can be done within minutes. And I mean, it took, you know, I remember when I was at uni, it took us hours to do scripts for a spot for the radio or for a little video or doing an image like that, or, you know, I mean, forget about doing storyboards. I mean, you go to ChatGPT and Midjourney and Photoshop, and you basically say what you want to do, and you put a few references, you put your brand guidelines there, and you say, look, use my brand guideline, make sure you follow it, apply, give me 10 options, and it does it for you. And guess what? It does a better job than I suppose most agencies can do right now. So if you are actually able to use ChatGPT as a way to how can I say, make you more powerful, faster, more effective, all the way. And I think it's one of those things that if you don't know how to use it, you're out. You need to really bring it into your everyday and to your teams. Make sure that they're able to compete fairly. Because if you're not, then you're out. You know.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I definitely appreciate the value in like my role in marketing and stuff. Like,
Absolutely.
I have to say, it's quite a good muscle to have on your side. And even as a consumer, like I don't know, searching or planning a trip, for example, if there's like a tool that can give me exactly, because I think that's sort of like the challenge with a lot of these. I don't know, even just booking a flight, for instance, it's always like so much information and so much that you don't need.
Yeah.
But then, you know, when you kind of, if you have like a tool that can really narrow down exactly like, okay, give me a price comparison of like these hotels and this destination, or like where, you know, and just really get that like planned out with the specific details. I
Yeah.
can only imagine that growing as it gets more, you know, implemented.
Yeah.
The only thing that I'm a little bit sensitive about is when it comes to AI art, because I am like an amateur artist. So I'm very like, you know, it could be a whole other podcast on its own, this topic and my like, my thoughts on it. But yeah, it's definitely very valuable in terms of like the productivity and an enabler, I guess, to sort of support.
I wouldn't be concerned about creative roles at all. In fact, when you think about more mechanical, more technical roles, like being a lawyer, for example, I wouldn't recommend my daughter to study law today, because right now, all you need is a good platform that actually does all the work for you. They can do petitions, they can do all the documentation you need, they can submit things to court without having a lot of people. But the people that think about this, the creative people that are going to be having to create the thesis and basically or create the idea, those probably are the only ones that can't be replaced. So creative jobs are the ones that can't be replaced, because you need to be able to tell the machine to do something. The machine doesn't do everything by themselves yet, and I think that would be a very scary thing when it does, when it gets to that point. Hopefully, some of it could be done, and I suppose it'd be amazing if it did. But can you imagine? Like, I mean, I can imagine, the machine saying maybe it can do now, but I mean, you still had to feed all the background and all the information to actually make all of that creativity to pop out. So, for example, if you look at the screen in my background, I mean, it's a screen that has everything, but somebody had to think about it and tell you what they wanted to do, and he did what we asked for. It wasn't like, do whatever you want to do. Today I was seeing a guy from a company that does architecture buildings by itself. That was the very first time ever that I saw a platform that does things, that does design by themselves. You only put the requirements, but still the rules of, okay, what do I want? Do I want it to the building to resemble a shell? Do I want it to resemble a snake or whatever it is? And then you have to think about that, and then the machine doesn't do that. So I think creative jobs are safe. I don't think we're going to get to the point where creative jobs are gone, and we just be listening and seeing machine generated content. People want to see faces, like and you and I and whoever else. They want to relate there. We are humans. We are social creatures. We want to be connected. We want to be involved. We want to hear it, and it's fascinating, and I don't think that's ever going to go away.
Yeah, I agree. And even, yeah, like it's more sort of the question, I guess, of like going back to the art thing. It was just sort of like, oh, is AI art or is it not? And it's kind of this like, I don't know. It's a very philosophical debate, I guess, for another time. But yeah, I mean, having said that, though, I do use like DALL-E quite a bit to, I prompt it with, like, sometimes I have like crazy dreams. And I'm like, okay, I just want to draw something really quick on it. So I'm like, not going to, spend time doing it myself. So let me just like test it's even a test of like the communication skills, I guess, to see like, okay, how can I
express
communicate this really complicated, sometimes nonsensical, experience or or story or whatever to and see what comes out. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So it's a bit of an eye opener, and I guess something to train on like the communication skills as well, which is pretty valuable. Cool. Well, we're actually coming to the end of our time, but I just had one more question before we go. So as we're sort of coming to the end of this year and looking ahead to 2024, what are you most looking forward to in the new year, and why?
I think that I think that one of the things, I have two kids, and they're definitely my most valuable and important relationships and let's say emotional assets I have in my life, and they grow very fast. One of them is 15 now, the other one's 9, and I think that it's very easy to get lost in work and working so hard and not spending time with the kids together and enjoy them as much as we should. Time flies by very quickly, and when you realize, when you're 15, they will probably spend another maybe a couple of years with you until the time that we die. So we really have to think about how to spend more time with kids and making sure I can help them become the best versions of themselves. They can be happy, and they can be more than happy. I want them to be useful, and I want them to be able to create value, because if they are able to feel useful and to create value in whatever they do, they'll be successful and they'll be happy. So I think that for me, that's probably my biggest challenge every year. How can I do that? And we're humans, we make mistakes, we make bad choices, and we're not always the best, let's say, role models for our own kids. We try to, but we're not perfect, and I don't even try to be perfect. So I think that for me, that's I'm hoping to spend a lot more time with them and do a lot more exciting things with them, and spending more time to see them grow and see them flourishing into beautiful women and powerful and very how can I say, self-sufficient, and able to create value in whatever they're doing. And I think that thank God they're on the right track. I think that their mom's been very good at it and helping. She's been there all the time. I've been traveling a lot. I spend, I don't know, 200 days a year away, maybe more, 250, I guess. So I'm not always there, but I'm trying to be a bit more there if I can. And that's what I'm looking forward to this year. And I think it's going to be a fantastic year. I can feel it in my bones.
Yeah, well, I have to say, if it's of any I don't know if comfort is the right word, but just based on our conversation today and like learning more about like who you are as a person, and like how you sort of have this drive of, taking things and turning it into value and stuff. I think that's a very good like role model for your kids. So, I think in that sense, it sounds like, you're on the right track. So well done. And yeah, it's a great resolution for the new year. So on that note, thank you very much for coming and being a guest on our podcast today. And thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you so much for having us or having me. It was a pleasure.